Welcome to Hashmarks and Working Tools, where football meets the craft and hot takes come properly squared. Hosts Mike McDermott and Joel Cade torch NFL game film, then grab the Masonic working tools to talk strategy, character, and the craft itself.
Welcome to a new episode of the Hashmarks and Working Tools podcast. All together, we are your hosts, Mike McDermott and Joel Cade.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome, Joel.
Howdy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
So how is another week of Steelers football treating you?
It's just fine, actually. I mean, we've been, it's been a slow week, really. We had an update from Patrick Graham. He's our new defensive coordinator, and he said he's going to be switching stuff up this year, right? He didn't like everything that was happening last year when he watched it, and he's brand new to the team, so he says he's going to be making some changes. Then I guess Aaron Rodgers popped his name keeps on floating around, right? Because he was given a deadline to say, hey, are you going to play or are you not going to play? And he still hasn't come out and said whether or not he's going to play for the Steelers next year. So yeah,
you guys are in that like Aaron Rodgers purgatory kind of stuff.
Yeah. Self-inflicted because we allow that to happen, right?
Right. That's why you need that deadline and just be like, we're done. Like, have fun, Aaron Rodgers, playing for somebody else. Let me ask you about your defensive coordinator. And now, when he's talking about making changes, is he talking about making schematic changes? Because I don't think T.J. Watt plays a 4-3. Like he's definitely an archetype, or at least a typeset for a 3-4 outside linebacker.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he's talking about changes. He may be talking positional changes. I hope that's what he's talking about. I mean, we are so deep. Our defense is, stacked, 2 or 3 deep in a lot of the different positions with high quality guys. And, so if we take a hit, and injury and stuff like that on defense, our next guy is just as good as the first one, right? So I see him thinning the flock out, I think, during the offseason.
Right. You would think you'd want to keep with that 3-4 style because that's what you have on the roster. I mean, Browns fans have been through the whole, like, we're going to change the whole defensive scheme. And then you got all these players that don't fit what the new defensive coordinator wants to do. And I would just, caution, and hopefully the Steelers, I mean, as a Browns fan, I wouldn't care if the Steelers do this, but as a Steelers fan, I would think that you'd be hoping that they wouldn't be going off that 3-4 kind of double gap with your defensive line scheme to allow your linebackers to run free. I mean, that's how that scheme works. You get 3 big fat dudes that take up 2 guys so that there's nobody getting to the second level. And and the Ravens are like famous for their guys holding. Like every game I've watched the Ravens, you always have a defensive lineman holding. And everybody asks, what's defensive lineman doing holding? Well, they're grabbing offensive linemen to prevent them from getting to the linebackers to make tackles. That's what they're doing. And the Ravens do it all the time. And this is part and parcel of why Ray Lewis was so successful. Is like, you got 3 people up there holding 5 people, grabbing one with, literally I've seen them grab one with each arm to prevent them to get to the second level. And you're like, are we calling this or not? And the coach on the other side has to sit there and scream and yell, call this. And then finally they call it. And then John Harbaugh whines like a baby. What are you talking about?
I didn't see anything.
It's clear on television. No, his argument is generally you didn't call it before, so why are you calling it now? Right? If you didn't call it for 3 quarters, why are you calling it now? Which means the officials have to make a decision. We're going to get into officials already. I want to talk about officials anyway. But they have forced the officials to make themselves part of the game. So if you just go out there and your base operations is to hold and penalize and do everything wrong, you're forcing the officials to make themselves part of the game by calling penalties. And the NFL doesn't want their officials calling penalties because then the game becomes about the officials and not about the players. And the Ravens know that. At least John Harbaugh knew that. And so they would go out there and just commit atrocious penalties all the time and just dare an official to call the penalty.
Right.
It's a way of playing football.
It is. Yeah, that's pretty much, there's not a lot else with Steeler football. We have a lot of guys nursing injuries. We probably have 24 guys nursing injuries. And And then on top of that, Omar Khan is out there shopping, right? He's out there because for folks who don't know what kind of how the football season goes is right now is when we start building the 90 man, right? So, we go from, our stacked team that we just finished the season with, and then we build, right? So we go get a couple more linebackers, couple more defensive ends, couple more, scrub quarterbacks basically to use, just to get just beat up on and stuff in training camp, right? And so those guys will come into training camp and help our team develop. The coaches will get to see all 90 of them working together. And then, yeah, I mean, there's going to be guys that are just going to be fodder and just going to be shoved away at the end of training camp.
Right. Camp bodies.
Yeah, camp bodies.
Camp bodies. So yeah, like it's like you're saying, the regular season roster expanded to 90. I mean, Major League Baseball has the equivalent of this with their 40-man roster, except in October they expanded to 27, I think. But you have a roster or a pool of players you can pull from to create your final roster. So yeah, right now the NFL is in a kind of a waiting until the league year starts, which I think is the middle of March. And when the league year starts is when player acquisition can begin. So right now there's a lot of focus on who am I going to look at, who are free agents. Teams have to a certain deadline to make franchise tags on or offers to exclusively with the team that they're currently with. Then that window opens during the league year for free agency. We also have the draft preparations. We just had the Senior Bowl this week, I believe. Maybe it was last week. Last week was the Combine, or it might be this week. I'm not paying attention to the Combine, actually, believe it or not. So this is where you get, like, what's his name? The bald guy who goes out and runs in his suit. You get that going on. You get the comparisons of who ran the 40. I saw a comparison where Tom Brady ran his 40 at 42 years old faster than he did at 22 years old, which was interesting to me. But so yeah, so we're starting a player acquisition cycle. In fear of talking too much, I'll talk about Browns news real quick. So Quinshon Judkins is out of a boot, so that's good. We need him back to run and the football. Although I would be a fan of drafting Jeremiah Love, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. But he's going to be a stud. Otherwise, in Browns news, it's the same stuff. If you need clicks, if it's a boring time, there's not many people looking at your stuff, you just go out there and say something like the Browns are going to draft a quarterback, and then everybody flocks to go see your pages and what you're writing. I mean, Todd Monken literally came out and talked about how he was going to, and the Ravens were going to draft Shedeur Sanders in the 4th round when the Browns picked him in the 5th, right? We're going to draft him in the 4th round, and he said, no, I'm good. I don't want to sit behind Lamar Jackson and learn. I'd rather start somewhere else. And so then the Browns, the next round, picked him up. But, he said no to the Eagles as well. So, I mean, told the Eagles he didn't want to go to Eagles. So he didn't fall to the 5th round because nobody wanted him. He's partially out there telling people don't draft him. So that's what's going on in Browns news. It's the same old. We don't have enough clicks, so therefore we're going to say something outrageous like the Browns are going to draft a quarterback, which they're not.
So if you see any team updates, it's probably clickbait, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the only thing that really goes on during the Combine and that you really need to pay attention to is when they go to the Combine and you're watching it on the NFL Network, which I've literally taken vacation weeks and just done nothing but watch the Combine. I'm never doing it again. But when they show a team, you always want to see like who that front office is next to. So those suites in I don't know if they're in Indianapolis this year, but in Indianapolis there's suites, right? Each team has a suite. So if the Browns are beside the Jets on the one side and maybe the Colts on the other side, generally what happens is when you go to the draft, those teams will make trades with the teams that they shared suites with or were beside during the Combine. Because it's during the Combine where they're already talking to all the players that these teams start talking to each other about their evaluations, and they start talking to each other about, hey, do you want to make a trade at this? We're in 6. Do you want to come up to 6? Do you want to go down from 6? This is where most of the trades happen, but they tend to happen with, the team who is in the suite to the left and the right of you at the Combine.
So who chooses that? Is that a Goodell thing, or Goodell just figures that out, or they bid on who they're going to be next to?
I have no idea, but it is a quirk of the draft
That's fascinating.
that teams tend to trade with whoever has the suite beside them at the combine. It happens a lot. Like last year, the Browns had a suite beside the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Big trade right at the top.
Yeah, it was just funny. It came up in my feed from last year, was the combine performance for Darnell Washington. Big Darnell Washington. We call him Mount Washington.
Just the tight end, the big giant tight end.
He's a big giant tight end that just face planted 3 Browns on one run this year. On the ground.
Oh, I'm sure. Their effort was sometimes lacking, but go ahead.
Yeah, they made it pretty easy. The Browns this year made for great highlight reel for Darnell Washington. So in his combine, he ran the 40. This big guy ran the 40 in 4.65.
So he's what, 280, 290?
Yeah.
Wow,
that was his combine weight, but then he got up to 300 during the playing year.
He's like an offensive lineman masking as a tight end. Like,
he's just so tall, and his wingspan, right? So he could just catch a ball way up high. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see that kid develop. I mean, I say kid because he's still a kid, you know.
Like, how old is he?
He's 23.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's still a kid.
No 23-year-old wants to be told they're a kid, but yeah, he's a kid. So I guess I want to move into the Freemasonry section of the podcast, because we've been talking a lot about time today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how old somebody is, the timelines for the NFL, these kind of things. And the working tool we were going to discuss today was the level, right?
Correct.
And you can correct me or give me your interpretation, but here's how I understand the level. So the level is a working tool of a fellow craft. In operative masonry, it's basically to make sure that things are level. It's typically, in modern times, it's got the little bubble in the water, and you move it up and down, and it shows you when things are actually level. As free and accepted Masons, we use the level to signify our mortality, right? We live in a temporal world, that there is a levelness to our existence in that we all have the same beginning and the same end. And it's only in the middle that there is a stratification of humanity, right? Some people have more money, or whatever it is your society values, age, money, whatever it is, that somehow tends to think that one human being is somehow higher and more important than another. And as free and accepted Masons, we tend to remind ourselves through the use of the level that we are all on the same path. We are all ultimately going to die in our mortality, and we are all, like I say, beings that live in beginning, middle, and end, past, present, and future. And in that way, we are all equal.
Right. Yeah. The level, as I've seen it in Freemasonry, is something that you can use to test a horizontal. Right. So that's how the operative Masons used it, is to test the horizontal, so make sure it was straight. Right. So that at no point in their construction is one point higher than the other.
Right.
There's no bumps. Right. Everything is level. And for the podcast viewers, I'm on video as well on YouTube, right? So you can see I'm just like, you're making things level, so nothing rises above anything else. And in the lodge, we have the same thing, right? We do not judge. We have no judgment or discernment of, income, titles, job description, anything like that. We are all judged specifically and only by our character.
Correct. Yes.
So that's how I see the level really being, is like when I walk into the lodge, I'm with my brothers, and there's not one that is above us. There's not one that is below us. And we are all there participating on the level.
Okay, so I think you have the more practical approach. I'm doing the more philosophical approach, right?
Yeah.
Because
there's a lot of ways to look at it.
Plato, the philosopher Plato once said that all philosophy is preparation for death, right? So that the use of, and he was being serious, like the use of reason and the use of rationality is geared toward helping us as human beings to live the best possible life, knowing that we will ultimately all die, right? So
right.
memori mortis, remember that
Mhm.
your death, right? So I mean that's Latin, but Plato wouldn't have said that. He would have said something else. But um, that philosophical notion that it's that death that ultimately forces us in a kind of an existential way to take hold of our life and live it, right?
Right, exactly.
To embrace it, right?
Mhm.
Carpe
Yeah.
diem, seize the fish.
I don't think that's what that means.
No, it doesn't.
So, because this is a football and Masonic podcast, there's one saying that's always brought up in football, right? Is we want and expect to play on a level playing field, right? Where officiating is evenly distributed for both teams. So not one team gets the benefit from officiating, or, one team is not detrimented by officiating.
Right.
And we don't always see that, right?
So I think it's been interesting over the last, I mean, I've been covering football for probably 8-9 years now, and maybe even longer. I don't even remember, but it's interesting in the last 2 or 3 years, especially with the Kansas City Chiefs coming through, the amount of acceptance of the idea that football is rigged. Like, and I say this, you know how a certain corporate culture deals with issues when they arise, right? You get your PR
Right.
person out there and you got a few things, right? If it's a very serious accusation, you come out and you make a joke out of it. If it's something that makes a joke of you, you come out and you deal with it on a very serious situation. You approach it with the opposite. What was interesting about, and so if you think it's nothing, then you ignore it because it's pointless and there's no reason to deal with it. There's all kinds of strategies to deal with issues when they arise. Whenever this cheating stuff comes up, nobody, like for years, it all just like was ignored. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and everyone is making a joke about it. I mean, like every network, every analyst on every network is making a joke out of officiating being rigged and the NFL being rigged. And I saw that and I thought, wow, the NFL now feels like they have to address this. This is becoming a serious issue because the NFL, right?
Yeah.
If you don't play ball with them as an analyst, you don't get the news.
Right.
That's what it is. So
yeah,
they've effectively made everybody out there their mouthpiece. And so for everyone to say it means that the NFL has come out with, this is our new talking point. It's kind of crazy the way they can control the media. But
well, yeah, and with the introduction of Thursday Night Football, with Amazon sponsoring Thursday Night Football, you have AWS stats, right? And the NFL really, has to deal with this topic seriously, because the stats all show what we all see, right? It's confirmation, so it's confirmation bias if you think it was a bad call and I think it was a bad call. That's confirmation bias, right? So, but AI is telling us that there will be no penalties against the Kansas City team in the third and fourth quarter. And, so the NFL has to deal with that. That's impossible, right? To go in and say that that's going to happen. And so when those stats come out, the NFL now has to deal with it because it's far beyond just a confirmation bias between 2 or 3 or 5 fans and stuff. We're talking stats.
Right. So like when the NFL decided to come out and make it a joke, that's exactly what they're saying. Look at these idiot fans out there. They're so funny. They're so stupid. They think this is going on. It's all just like, look at these crazy people. Let's label them as these idiots, right? Because no real rational person would think that this is going on. And then you get, like you said, AWS stats to come out. Then all of a sudden, like it's a real thing. And so now you have to figure out, how am I going to address this? Because the NFL's policy is they want the players to determine the outcome of the game. Right. And this gets back to that Ravens situation I was talking about earlier, where the Ravens are just going to go out and cheat to force the official to call penalties and become a part of the game, which they know the NFL doesn't want them to become a part of the game.
Right.
So it becomes this kind of these two forces coming at each other from a team perspective, but also from the NFL. They know fans don't want to sit there and watch officials do penalties because that's what makes fans mad. It stops the game, which makes the networks mad because now like their games are running long and they've only sold so many commercials. This is why you you rarely see commercials in the fourth quarter because they've played all their commercials in the first three. And the last thing the NFL wants is the officials being the center of the focus.
Yeah. I think you're right that the media has started to, like, the play callers and stuff, the talking heads have started to even kind of move towards that direction as well, because, you know, everyone criticizes how much glazing that Chris Collinsworth does to Patrick Mahomes, right? You know, and even now, you know, just recently, as the Kansas City game goes on, Chris Collinsworth, you can hear him moaning when he sees the tackles doing obvious holds on a slow-mo replay, right? So he goes, because he sees the hold. No one says anything, but Chris Collinsworth goes, because he sees the tackle like literally wrapping up that guy and holding so that Mahomes can throw his pass. So, you know, when you get the guys that are, you know, 100% for Patrick Mahomes, and you see the Kansas City hold, man, we've all been seeing it for years, right? But even now, Chris Collinsworth is starting to like react differently when he sees those.
Yeah, it's the idea that these games might be rigged is coming to the forefront. Now, the holding, right? I mean, Myles Garrett gets held in every single play. I mean, if you're not putting 6 people on him like the Steelers did, you got like 2 people just grabbing him and holding him. It's life for a defensive end. I mean, I've seen videos of TJ Watt getting held like crazy, right? But the reason they hold and the officials let them hold is that they don't want the quarterbacks hurt. And the reason they don't want the quarterbacks hurt is because the quarterback is the money. If you're a Bengals fan and Joe Burrow is hurt, which is a common occurrence, you're just like, what are we doing?
Right.
We got backup Joe Flacco out there. We got backup nobody. I don't want to watch that. So the NFL is invested in, right? This is where the officiating comes in, is invested in their quarterback staying upright and being on the field. And so they're going to tell the officials, don't call the holding on Myles Garrett, because Myles Garrett is going to beat you one-on-one. I don't care who you are.
Right.
He's going to beat you one-on-one. You have to go out with 2. Then he's going to beat 2 after about 2.5 seconds. So the quarterback has a choice. Throw the ball under 2.5 seconds, which I think Aaron Rodgers had the highest release rate in the history of the NFL when they played the Browns. In 2.1 seconds, he got the ball out of his hand. Or you're just grabbing him and holding him. And a lot of times it's both. And the officials aren't going to call it because they want the game to be offensive, scoring points, right? So I want to get to, I think the question of, is the NFL a level game, is a fair one to ask, because I'm not sure the answer is yes. And I think there's a lot of economic reasons to say that it's not a level game. A lot of economic reasons. But I want to talk about the proposed rule change to the replays. Okay. So indulge me for a minute. I know I'm a talker, but indulge me for a minute. So according to the NFL rules, there is one person responsible for reviewing plays and making the call, and that is the vice president. I looked this up. The vice president, I got on a different page. The vice president of officiating, senior vice president of officiating, or their designee, right? These people hang out at the Art McNally Game Day Central in New York. We don't know who they are, what they're about. How does one guy watch all the replays from all those games at one time? We don't know, except during a game, they actually went to a shot of them, and they had this whole control room like NASA in there. And so everybody started asking the question, who are these people calling the replays from New York? Because it's supposed to be the senior vice president of officiating, which, by the way, the NFL for like 3 years running did not have a senior vice president of officiating, but they were still making calls from New York, which was, I'm like asking who's doing this. But crazy. This is the level of stupidity I get into with the NFL, right? I mean, I guess if you cover this stuff for about 10 years, this is the kind of level you get to. I'm asking myself, who's actually doing this stuff? And now, not only do we not know, because we've seen, I mean, the guy's current name is Ramon George, and we've seen Ramon George and other places on Sunday, then not at the McNally Center. So who's making the call, right? So the new proposal, and you'll love this, is that the replay booth, not the replay, they call the replay booth, but the people in New York is proposed that they can call penalties on the field. Now, we're talking about objective penalties. So a perfect case scenario would be, let's say you have a coach that runs out onto the field and picks a fight with a player, right? And the player hits him. Well, instead of the official just saying, oh, the player hit the coach and threw the flag, and then all of a sudden the coach gets off scot-free, and then the team marches down the field, kicks field goal, and wins the playoff game, right? In that scenario, which you would know nothing about, Mike, right? Or the Steelers would know nothing about this scenario.
No.
In that scenario, apparently, the people from New York can come back and say, well, there's no reason for that coach to be on the field. That in and of itself is a penalty. Then you've got another penalty from the player hitting the coach after the coach started a fight. Those would be offsetting penalties, and the play would be put back to where it was after the down, because those are post, after the play penalties.
Mm-hmm.
So those would offset, and it would be like it didn't happen. So they're also talking about fights, things that they're calling objective calls for replay officials, like pushes, punches, hits, extracurricular activities after plays. So that's the proposal. I think there's a lot of problems with the proposal, but I want your opinion on the proposal.
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong, because I did read a little bit about this, is what they're proposing is that the folks in New York will be able to call penalties that didn't have flags, right? So these are penalties that was not observed, or was observed and not called by the referees. Both conditions, right? Whether or not they saw it or not, right? So you have an entire referee squad on the field, and you have New York calling down.
And backups. There are 4 backups.
Correct.
Who 2 on each sideline,
mm-hmm.
that assist with things on the sidelines during games. But go ahead.
Yeah. So New York will be able to make a phone call, say, stop the game. We saw something that none of you saw on the field from our vantage point in New York City. And we're going to call a penalty and assess it against a team or team.
Correct.
Wow.
Now, again, it's supposed to be non-football acts. So they're not getting into holding. They're not getting into pass interference. They're not getting into this thing happened and this guy was tackled in the end zone, which I've seen 1,000 times, man.
Yeah.
Like the Ravens, I mean, like Marlon Humphreys is straight garbage. How this guy, I mean, anyway, I'm getting off. I've seen him tackle people in the end zone and basically dare an official to call a penalty, right? Instead of giving up a touchdown, he just tackles players. And either it gets called or it doesn't get called. If it gets called, they whine like babies and make it go on for 20 minutes so that an official never calls it again, because it's like a human rain delay in the football game, right? So they're not getting into that stuff. They're just getting into if there's a fight on the sideline, if somebody after play spits on somebody, non-football kind of stuff that essentially just makes the NFL look bad is what they're trying to penalize.
Right. So as a Steeler fan, I'm not for this because I want to have those players, especially like, I'm not really, everything is, I think, is ticky-tack with the skill players, but I want my linemen, I want my offensive linemen and my defensive linemen to be beasts, to be dirty, to play hard. And that's what I want to see. That's why I watch the game. I don't want to have an excessive violence or something like that for, being called on linemen.
Well, I mean, let's say this. Let's say Joel Bitonio pulls and tries to block TJ Watt, and then TJ Watt dives at his knees to break his knees. That's not going to get called like it didn't when it actually happened in real life. So you don't have to worry about that. You guys can still play dirty and try to hurt people and during the play. But it's the after the play extracurricular activities they're going to try to get onto. Like Joey Porter coming onto the field and harassing Bengals.
How are they going to know? These players aren't mic'd up. What happens, if somebody...
Oh, please. The NFL could mic up players and all of a sudden lose audio. I mean, we all saw the Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph situation. Both players were mic'd up, and there was a parabolic mic pointed right at them. So you have 3 audio sources of what was said and what wasn't said during that whole Myles Garrett hitting him in the head with the helmet situation. There are 3 mics that record what was said. Myles Garrett said he called me a racial slur, and the NFL says, oh my God, we don't have any audio of this whatsoever. and we don't record people while they're playing. And then you can watch that clip, right? And then go to the NFL app, and then right after it, click on mic'd up and listen to people talk during plays for 30 minutes. So the NFL just kind of says what they want to say when they want to say it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So exactly. And I don't want, somebody in New York listening into these players' feeds on, your mother is this, or hey, what are you doing after the game, right? Those kinds of things.
So I would say this. I think they're trying to limit it. If you want my gut honest opinion, they're going to limit it to things that a fan would see on TV and think, oh, he hit my player. That's a penalty. Why didn't we get a penalty? And then they're going to jump in and say, this guy hit this guy on the sideline, or this guy spit on this guy, things that are going to make the NFL look bad to the national media. Of course, afterward, they're going to put it on promo videos, but in the game, they're going to actually call it a penalty.
No, it's soft, man. I think that's just absolute softness. When these players are out there, they're high performance machines, and they're amped up with adrenaline, and they're going to say things, right? They're going to talk crap, and they're going to say things, they're going to do things, and that's the reason why we've always watched football. We're going to get soft here if every time somebody calls a player a name or something like that, or gets up off the ground and pushes somebody with the shoulder. New York's going to make a phone call, right?
See, and that's where it's not. And I agree with you. I mean, you're taking people who may or may not be taking steroids, okay? Because there's steroids are always ahead of the testing. Well, let's be honest. They may or not be taking the latest steroid situation before they can test for it. They're amped up. Their testosterone levels through the roof. They're doing everything they can to enhance their performance, and they're probably on these rages. And this is why we like them, right? Lyle Alzado came out and said, "Not going to lie, I'm in it for the violence," and it's like one of my favorite quotes all time. But Lyle Alzado also went on the "Don't Take Steroids" tour. Okay, so you got these people amped up. They're competing. They're going to be pushy. They're going to be shovey. What's the line, right? And I think ultimately where the rubber hits the road with this is that this is more opportunity for the NFL officiating from New York, who we don't know who they are,
right?
Which was my point earlier today. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their motivations are. We don't know why they're there, who's they're there, what they're actually doing. Gives them more opportunities to affect the outcome of a game.
Right. It's just yet one additional step, right? And it slows the game down too, right? Because if they're calling a penalty from New York, it's going to take them time to review it. They're going to have to call down the explanation to the ref that the umpire of the game, right? He's the guy with the white hat has to come out and now explain what New York just called on the field. And then you have the fans in the stands who are like, well, we didn't see that. Or
there would be one thing I would think would be interesting to go back and watch. And the NFL had this 5 incidents from 2025, but there was an incident where the Browns were playing the Chiefs, and the Chiefs coach comes over and pushes the Browns player. He stumbles backward, happens to step on a Chiefs player that was on the ground. The official throws the flag, calls a personal foul conduct, throws the Browns player out for stepping on the Chiefs player. When you watch it on replay, it's because a Chiefs coach ran over and pushed him onto the player. And it's obvious to anybody watching it, right? So the NFL suspends the Chiefs coach for 2 games because of it.
Yeah.
But what happened to the Browns? The Browns lost a player. They got a 15-yard penalty for a situation that the NFL acknowledges was the coach's responsibility. And the player still got fined for stepping on him. And I'm like, we should just start a GoFundMe for this crap, because and I'm sure the Browns would have paid, like Browns fans would have paid that fine. I promise you. But I want to take this a step further, because I don't know if you've seen these reports where the labor agreement between the NFL and the umpires is not going well. The officials. So part of why they're touting this replays from New York situation is that I think what's going to happen is if they can't come to a labor agreement with the union, they may come back in with replacement officials. And if they come back in with replacement officials, this may get expanded to, oh my God, you just threw a Hail Mary in the back of the end zone, and we're going to make sure that that's officiated correctly.
Man.
So where's it's the slippery slope. Once you start this, and they're already talking about if we have to have a replacement officials, we can make the calls from New York without the officials. We'll just get replacements in there, and when they screw up, we'll just make the correct call from New York. They're already talking about it. So if you haven't even imposed the rule yet, and you're already talking about overruling officials as a future step, what does it become Big Brother that's just orchestrating the outcomes? And this is why people sit and talk about are NFL games rigged. Like literally you could do a search, NFL replay, change officials, and the third thing that I pulled up, NFL rule change proposal would lead to more rigged games from Yahoo Sports. That was the headline from Yahoo Sports, more rigged games.
I don't like it.
So I think it's,
I don't like it.
You know, talking about the level, is it fair? I mean, I don't like to say the level is fair, but like, is it a situation where the playing field is even, where everyone has the same opportunity as everyone else? Not when it comes to money. And you think about it in the United States where, and I don't want to get into politics, but I just want to point out that in the United States, we have a culture where if you have more money, that you are somehow morally better than someone else. Like, you know, and if you do something wrong, you're not going to have to pay for that penalty because you have the money to pay yourself out of it, basically.
Right.
It's like Monopoly. Just pay $200 and you get out of jail free. You know, when it comes to the NFL, that same kind of principle exists, right? Certain teams make more money. Those teams have basically bought themselves out of penalties.
Right.
The Steelers are one of them. The Browns are not. The Cowboys are another one. Right. The Jets are not. The Jets haven't had a winning season in 10 years.
Right.
Okay. Like, and people still think the Browns are the most losing organization in the NFL, but they're not. Like, the Jets haven't had a winning season in 10 years.
Right.
The Browns' last winning season was 3 years ago, which puts them pretty high on the list of teams that have had recent winning seasons. Right. You know, but like the Jets, they're not getting calls. That's a part of it. If you're a losing team, you're not getting calls. But if you're a losing team, you're getting your guy pushed by a coach and he's going to fall backwards and they get called for a 15-yard penalty for falling backwards, basically. That's what's going to happen to you if you're not winning.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to football being an entertainment, right? And not a sport, right? And so it's kind of moving into that direction, you know, to make the game more exciting for people, to make it a more entertaining thing, you know, when you're sitting there, and I'm sure you sat there as well, right, watching the game, and you know, and the number of calls for roughing the passer and stuff like that on a rookie quarterback is so low.
It's like next to nothing.
It's next to nothing. Like they could care less how for the health of that rookie quarterback, right? He is going, if he gets plastered, he deserved to get plastered, right? And you know, then you have the franchise quarterbacks, right? You can barely bump into them, right? If you bump into them and they flop on the ground, boom, you've got roughing the passer.
Right. If Tom Brady fumbles in a playoff game, you'll just change the rule on the spot to make it an incomplete pass.
Right.
Talk to Raiders fans about that one.
Yeah. And so I do not think, I think the goal of football as a sport is that everyone tries to make a level playing field, right? So you go to a peewee game, level playing field, right? That's the goal of the officiating during the game, is to have a level playing field.
As a sport.
As a sport.
I'm going to play off that later, but go ahead. As a sport.
As a sport. That's what it is, right? But then as we kind of consecutively go up through high school and then into college football, it becomes more of an entertainment thing. It becomes, then money becomes an aspect as soon as you get into college. Money is becoming, you know, an aspect now in high school, right? So these players are getting paid.
Yep.
And so how many calls?
I mean, you could make the case that this is why Notre Dame didn't make the college football playoffs, because ESPN controls the contracts of the ACC and they want their people in the playoffs so they can promote them next year for the ACC network. Go ahead.
That's clearly what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clearly what happened.
And what was Notre Dame supposed to do? Go play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which was broadcast by ESPN?
Right.
Why would you do that? Anyway, I mean, I understand. Again, just want to put Notre Dame's spot out there as to why they did what they did. But yeah, like, go ahead. Players getting paid, high school, college.
Yeah. Now you have players that are, in high school that are getting money, for advertisements and stuff like that. And their performance on the field and the stats that they rack in high school will help determine which college they go to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which colleges are going to pick them up. And so those stats, packing the stats kind of thing. We see this all the time now in the high school football is, it doesn't matter if you've got three guys covering that wide receiver. If that is a D1 wide receiver, he's going to get the pass. The coach says, pass the ball to that guy, even if he's triple covered. And it may be intercepted, right? The wide receiver may totally bobble the ball because, but it's going to go to him because he's going to get the target because he needs the stats to move on to the next level.
I'll tell you who the king of stat padding is. You ready for this? It's the SEC. They pad stats like no other conference on the planet. If
True.
They have a non-conference game, it's against like Alabama State or like Florida A&M or some team that has no business being on the field. And they do this mid-season, right? Alabama will play some garbage Division II team mid-season, and it's ridiculous, right? So then they run it up. Like they will win that game 70-0. And all that is stat padding. That's all it is. So you get to the end of the season. Look, they scored X amount of points per game and they rushed for this many yards per game as compared to some other team over here that like the Big Ten had a conference schedule like agreement with the Pac-12 before basically the Big Ten stole the Pac-12, right? They had this scheduling agreement where a Big Ten team would play a Pac-12 team and they would have a good game to start the season. Well, what they found is that you end up with a loss beginning of the season and your stats aren't real good because you're playing against another good team. And so you don't make the college playoffs at the end of the season. So you just start scheduling cupcakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, literally, that's half the schedule for Ohio State is, these cupcake. Why are you even playing this team, right? Because you don't want your key players getting injured, right? So, and why does the small college even accept that onto their schedules? Because they get paid, right? Yep. It's a payday for them.
That's how their program stays afloat.
Exactly.
Right. They get paid $1 million or $2 million to play Ohio State. And that's how they forward their athletic budget.
Right. And for Ohio State, it's great. Yeah, you can have a game that's 70 to 10, right? And everyone pats each other on the back. What a great game! We just killed it.
It's like a preseason game. This is like Michigan scheduling Appalachian State, right? You just come in and get the cupcake in, and then every once in a while, Appalachian State beats Michigan.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And because they're not expecting it, right? They can't, they walked into that stadium knowing that they are going to win, feeling like they're going to win, and they could play soft. And, that's the thing is, the schedule goes in and basically determines it. And then those same college players, right, who learned in college how the game works, how the entertainment business works. And then they move on to the pros, right? And then they take the same, look when they have a schedule, right? When they have a soft team that they're going to be playing, right? They play down to it, right? They play because, why try hard? You already know you're going to win. You'll win easily. And then that team is, that always gets stomped on, like the Jets, right? They just sit back, right? They're not going to try. And I think that's the situation they've been in for 10 years. Is they take that field and they don't try. They even brought the try guy, right? They brought Aaron Rodgers in, right, to go in and be that spark that they needed. The thing is you've got 51 other players that aren't down with that.
Right. I contrast this, and I'll just say because money I think ruins a lot of sports. I think baseball is going through this as well. But I will say this: I'm glad that in a lodge setting, it's not entertainment. Right. So we're not driven by the the entertainment factor. We're not there to say, how do we make lodge as entertaining as humanly possible so we can get as many people as possible so we can make as much money as possible. And I'm not saying there aren't lodges that aren't out there doing that either. Like, people fret over the attendance at lodges and people going, how many Masons are there? We're declining in numbers. What do we do? And then they try to make it to look like some kind of entertainment event, right? To get more people, because that's what they see businesses doing, because businesses are there to make money. We're not there to make money, right? We're there to make people. We're there to make good men better, right? That's the slogan floating around. So it's nice to be able to go to a lodge setting where we have maybe the mayor of Tip City and along with a guy who's an associate at a tree service, right? And they're all in the same place, right? And everybody's equal. There's not one person's not better than someone else. This is why we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. We don't elevate one person's status above another, except for where you are in the lodge. I could be the garbage collector and be the master, and then the person I collect garbage for being on the sidelines. And my rank and my value in that lodge is based on where, it's all the same, but we give more reverence to the person that's the master, because they're the head of the lodge, right? And the person who in society may be the president of the United States will give credence to or homage to the master of the lodge, who may be in fact his gardener. And that's the level on which we play. We're not going to take things from outside the lodge and let it determine what happens in the lodge.
Correct.
And so in that way, we try to stay on that level. Like, it's based on who you are as a person, who you are and your commitment level and your value of who you are, not what you are.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that the newly minted Masons, right? So the folks that are just kind of out, through the 3 degrees, the feedback that I get from them is that when they show up at lodge, it's not a situation where it's a normal networking event, right? So if you're a businessman, right, it's not there to go in and pass out business cards and make connections and like that, right? Yeah, it's now there may be opportunities to do that, but once you find out that that's not what that is and it's something entirely different, I think that's what keeps people coming, because it's different than everything else that they've ever experienced.
Right. It's a group of guys that are there to genuinely be friends with other guys.
Yeah. So like you said, the guy that works at the tree care place, right? He can go there and have a conversation and enjoy fraternal activities, right, with other men without any question about status of what you did at work today, right? And for me it's fascinating because then we have real conversations,
right?
Because we have real conversations, because I can go in and ask the questions and feel comfortable asking questions that I don't know, like oh, you work in the medical field, what do you do, and I can do that without going hey, I'm just the assistant in the operating room. I'm not the actual doctor that's doing the surgery, right? So I can actually ask a question without anybody feeling bad about where they are at work.
Right.
They spend 8 hours at work, right? With an echelon, being in a part of a staff where there are people that are more important than you at work. There are people that are less important than you at work. And we spend 8 hours a day in that environment. And then we come home, we take a shower, we get dressed, we go to lodge, and then we're in a place where rank doesn't matter.
Right. And there's no hidden agendas, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking to this person in the medical field to try to find out how do I subvert the medical system or how do I, do this or that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no hidden I'm trying to get you to do something for me because I know you do this or that. It's just guys who come together and are able, and in my opinion, you're able to just put down that false face that you have to put on for everybody around, because you don't know who they are, you don't know what they're about, you don't know what they want, you don't know what their agendas are, and you can come in, hang out with some guys that are not coming to you with an agenda other than who are you, and I genuinely want to know who you are and get to know you better as a person, and how can you help me to become a better person, not financially, not just as a person, like,
Right.
hey, I'm at work and I'm dealing with this, and this. I'm not expecting you to like fix my job. I'm expecting you to say, have you thought about this, and this? And you give me no judgment about what I do for a living.
Right.
And unless you've been in it, it's hard to describe. It really is. But it's really kind of like this ultimate safe zone where a man can be a man without being judged for being a man.
Right. Right. Yeah. And having that level playing field is very comfortable. And I think that's the other feedback that I get from the folks that are just newly minted as Masons, right? It's a level playing field that people feel really comfortable coming into. And I mean, I love the thought of it, but then I also love the execution of it, right? So it's a great idea, but then it's also a great idea in execution. And I think most of the lodges, when traveling, most of the lodges that I go to also do the same, right? And so, yeah, especially, well, it's mostly been in Ohio that I've been, Ohio lodges and stuff. So that's a common aspect of that. But then, even traveling to Virginia and stuff like that, I mean, it's very similar. It's very similar.
I'll say this. I got an email today from the Grand Lodge of Ohio congratulating me for being a Master Mason for 1 year. I have reached my 1 year status as a Master Mason.
Very nice. Very nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I just got some, I got stuff from, let's see, what is this? When you start doing some of the appendant bodies and stuff, Joel, you get cards. So you just like to recognize you and stuff like that. So I've got a 32nd degree card from the Scottish Rite.
Ooh, so did you do all the degrees?
I have not watched all of the degrees, but I have attained as many degrees as necessary, as well as the 32nd.
Okay.
So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I get a little card and stuff like that.
But I will point out, right? Yeah. That you and I know this, but our listener may not know this.
Sure.
Right. The highest degree that you can attain in Masonry is the Master Mason.
3rd degree. Yeah.
3rd degree. Right. So you can say, hey, I'm a 32nd degree Scottish Rite. That literally, back to this level situation. That just means you've achieved something in the Scottish Rite, right? Correct. But it's the Blue Lodge, it's the first 3 degrees that really kind of like, this is your Masonic training. Right. And it's the stepping stone that you have to do before everything else. But it's in and of its own right is what Masonry is. And so the highest degree you can attain is that 3rd degree in the Blue Lodge, the Master Mason degree. And what the Scottish Rite is again an appendant body. It's something else you can do that's good and useful and helpful, but doesn't usurp the lodge that we go to. Right.
Right. Exactly. So
it's still on the level. Is
what
I'm saying.
Right. Exactly. So for listeners and stuff, the appendant bodies are the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. And there are stories that go along with all 3 of the Blue Lodge degrees that are told, right? So there are stories sometimes told in allegory, sometimes historical.
Mm-hmm.
And then in both the York Rite and the Scottish Rite, there are further stories, right? So further learning that you pick up. Some of these are historical stories. Some of them are allegorical. Some of them are fantastical, right? But really, it all focuses in on the human condition and how Masons can improve the human condition as well as the condition of your family, right? So the broader human condition, and then how can you improve yourself with your wife, with your children, those kinds of things. So those are the topics really that are covered in the York and the Scottish Rite.
Nice. I may have to explore them since I've been a Mason or a Master Mason for 1 whole year now. I think I'm prepared to learn, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, and I wanted to discover it all just because I wanted to find out what was behind, door number 2, right? And door number 3 with the York Rite was to try and figure out, what was going on there. And
I'm still trying to figure that out with door number 1.
Yeah, there's so much still to learn in door number 1. There really is.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So no rush in any of these. any of these things. I can tell you that like if participating in the Scottish Rite and participating in York Rite stuff takes additional time, right? And so that's another thing, that if you don't have a lot of time to not only go through the degree work, but then also participate in those appendant bodies and their events and stuff like that. That takes a lot of time, right? And so I'm not even at that point in my life where I can go in and, you know, have a Thursday for lodge and then go Friday to York Rite and then, you know, the Monday afterwards the Scottish Rite event. And so like I don't have that kind of time, but I had enough time just to go in and complete the degree work. But and again, the nice thing is with York Rite and Scottish Rite is that everything is the same when it comes to the men that are meeting there. Is everyone meets on the level, and there's no one more important or, you know, more illustrious, right?
Correct.
You know, even those the titles you get, you know, within those degrees and stuff do have illustrious names and stuff like that. No one's wearing a shirt that says it, right? It's not a
nobody's saying I'm better than you because I have a title, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a fun thing, right? And it's nice to see that those extensions all carry the same core concepts, principles, and precepts of the Blue Lodge.
Right.
Nice. What else can we talk about the level there, Joel?
You know, I think we've hit it today. I mean, I think with the NFL, I think, you know, with getting back to the hash marks, you know, the NFL struggles with this, and the struggle with it really is because it's a money making enterprise. I mean, it's no longer truly a gladiatorial sporting event. It's more like, how do we orchestrate this to squeeze every last dollar out of our fans, and how do we make that happen? So I think the NFL would be better if it was more on the level, but I don't see it going in that way. All I see is more consolidation of power in New York through their officiating center, and less kind of like, hey, it's a fair competition and the officials make mistakes just as much as everybody else does. We're not going to see everything. We're not going to get everything. It just kind of is what it is, you know, and, you know, don't be the one retaliating, because they always catch the one that retaliates, right? Well, now they're trying to catch the one who does it first.
Right. I totally agree. Well, thanks, Joel. This has been an awesome podcast episode on the level. And I guess we'll meet up with you and all of our listeners next week.
Thank you very much. Thanks for letting me come on.
All right. Take care. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Hash Marks and Working Tools podcast, the level field lessons from the Gridiron and the Lodge. This podcast was sponsored by Bash Fu Digital Marketing.